Claire hadn't spoken much during the drive. The hum of the engine and the occasional flick of the turn signal filled the silence. Ethan didn't seem to mind. He had always been the quiet type, watchful, thoughtful. In many ways, he reminded her of a younger Mark, back when he used to listen. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of faded asphalt under a deepening orange sky. They had left Ethan's college town late, after his final exam ran longer than expected. Mark was supposed to make the trip, but as usual, work had come up. So Claire offered, not out of duty, but out of something she couldn't quite name. Maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness. It had been years since she and Ethan had been alone together. The boy she once knew, the one who refused to eat broccoli and spent hours building Lego towers, was now a young man, taller than his father, softer eyes, a quieter confidence. A sudden jerk broke the rhythm of the ride. Claire's hands tightened on the wheel. The dashboard lights blinked erratically, and the car stuttered before rolling to a complete stop on the shoulder of a quiet country road. "Did we just die?" Ethan joked lightly. Claire forced a smile, though her stomach twisted. Batteries? Gone or something worse. She reached for her phone. No signal. Ethan stepped out to check under the hood, though she knew neither of them would fix it tonight. When he returned, wiping grease on his jeans, his expression was calm but resigned. "We're not getting far. Nearest service station is 15 miles back." Claire sighed. "So, what now?" "There's a motel 2 miles down the road. I saw a sign about 10 minutes ago." They packed the essentials into a backpack and started walking. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting everything in hues of deep blue and amber. Claire felt the strange intimacy of the moment, of shared inconvenience, of unexpected stillness. The motel was modest. One flickering sign, one clerk who barely looked up, one room left. Claire hesitated. Ethan caught her expression. "It's okay," he said. "I'll take the floor or something." Inside, the room was small. A single bed, a dresser, a bathroom barely big enough for one. She turned on the heater. It was colder than expected. "You hungry?" he asked. "I saw a vending machine." She nodded. "Grab whatever looks least expired." While he was gone, she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her hair loose. Her head ached. It wasn't just the car or the walk. It was everything. Mark's clipped conversations, the unanswered texts, the sense that she was merely passing time in someone else's life. Ethan returned with 2 sodas and a bag of pretzels. "Gourmet," he announced. They sat side by side on the bed, eating in silence at first. Then Claire spoke, softly, almost to herself. "Do you ever feel like you're not seen? Like you're living next to people, not with them?" Ethan looked at her, thoughtful. "All the time," he said. "Especially at school. Everyone's so loud, but no one really says anything." She smiled faintly. "You sound like your father used to." He didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at his hands. "You know," he said, "you were the only one who ever came to my high school art show. Dad said he'd try, but work." Claire remembered. The gallery had been small, and Ethan's drawing, a quiet pencil sketch of a leaf in decay, still haunted her. "I liked your work," she said. "Thanks." A long silence settled between them, not awkward, but weighty. Claire reached for the blanket and laid it down on the floor. "You take the bed. You're younger." Ethan shook his head. "You drove all day. We can both fit, just back to back." She hesitated, then nodded. They climbed in carefully, each facing opposite walls. The bed creaked beneath them. Claire stared at the plaster ceiling, trying to slow her breathing. Outside, wind rustled the trees. Inside, she could feel the warmth of Ethan's presence, his breathing soft even. It should have been nothing, but it wasn't. She closed her eyes, hoping sleep would silence the thoughts, but the quiet made them louder. Claire awoke before dawn. A sliver of light crept through the thin motel curtains, casting a pale streak across the foot of the bed. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she heard Ethan's breathing, slow, steady, just inches behind her, and the weight of the night settled in. They hadn't touched, not really, but sharing that bed, even back to back, had stripped away more layers than she was ready to admit. She rose quietly, careful not to wake him, and stepped into the bathroom. The cold tiles startled her feet, grounding her. She splashed water on her face, studying her reflection in the mirror. There was no glamour in this image, hair tangled, eyes shadowed, lips drawn. Yet something else lingered in her expression, awareness. She dried her face and tiptoed back into the room. Ethan stirred, blinking up at her with a groggy half-smile. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Too quiet." He sat up, rubbing his neck. "I think I folded myself in half, trying not to move." Claire smiled faintly, then glanced toward the coffee pot on the dresser. "Let's see if that thing actually works." Ethan got up and started fiddling with it. They moved around each. Wordlessly, the silence now filled with something different. Not tension exactly, but attention. Everything felt heightened. Every glance, every breath, had weight. Claire perched on the edge of the bed as Ethan handed her a steaming mug. "Thanks," she murmured, their fingers brushing briefly. She pulled her hand back quickly as if burned, not by the heat, but by the recognition in his eyes. He'd felt it too. To break the moment, she asked, "What are you thinking about?" I sipped his coffee, then answered slowly, "I guess I'm wondering when things got this complicated." She looked at him. "You mean us?" His eyes flicked to hers, uncertain but unafraid. "I mean everything. Life, family. The way we pretend things are fine when they're clearly not." She looked away. "That's adulthood. A performance no one rehearsed for." He chuckled softly, then turned serious. "You seem sad lately." The word struck deeper than she expected. "I'm not sad, just tired." Tired of him? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared into her cup. The silence grew heavier. Finally, she spoke. "I don't think Mark sees me anymore. I'm part of the house, like the rug or the dining chairs. There, but unnoticed." Ethan leaned against the dresser, arms folded. "That's not what you deserve." She looked up at him, eyes narrowed. "Careful." "I didn't mean," he began. "I know," she cut in gently. "It's just, this isn't a conversation we should be having." He nodded but didn't retreat. "Maybe not, but it's the truth." A beat passed. She could feel it, the unspoken tension stretching thin. To distract herself, she walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. Rain had begun to fall, soft and rhythmic. The kind of rain that made you feel alone, even if you weren't. "I used to love storms," she said. Ethan moved closer, standing beside her now. "Why'd you stop?" "Because I used to share them with someone." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The rain picked up, tapping against the glass like fingers. Claire turned slightly. Ethan was watching her, not with boyish admiration, but with quiet reverence. She felt it, the danger, the draw, the line they stood on, the edge of. She took a step back. "We should pack up." Mechanic said he'd call around 8. Ethan nodded, the spell broken. "Right." She moved to the bathroom again, locking the door behind her, her breath uneven. She gripped the sink, heart racing, trying to remind herself of who she was, and who she wasn't. Back in the room, Ethan was already dressed, his bag packed. He looked up as she entered but said nothing. The quiet between them was different now, not warm, not cold, just full of everything that hadn't been said. Claire picked up her keys. "Let's go." As they walked out into the soft rain, she didn't look back, but part of her knew the real storm hadn't started yet. The mechanic called just after 8. The car was ready, he said, and someone would drive it over within the hour. Claire thanked him, her voice steady. She ended the call, set the phone down on the dresser, and turned toward Ethan, who sat on the edge of the bed tying his shoes. "Time to go back," she said. He nodded but didn't move. The room felt too still, like it was holding its breath. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle, washing the windows in streaks. The night was over, but nothing had truly ended. Claire gathered her things, folding her sweater and slipping it into her tote. Ethan stood, his bag slung over one shoulder, and moved toward the door. But he didn't open it. Instead, he turned to her. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She hesitated. "Depends. If things were different, if you weren't married to my dad, would we still be standing here like strangers?" Her throat tightened. "We're not strangers." "Then what are we?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. There was no label for whatever they had stumbled into, no clean category for emotional trespass. He took a step closer. "Last night, I didn't sleep much." She looked up. "Me neither. I kept thinking how wrong it would be to cross a line, but I also wondered how much worse it was that I wanted to." Claire felt her pulse in her fingertips. She forced herself to speak. "You're young, Ethan, and I'm not old, just lonely," he said, cutting her off gently. "And I hate that he made you feel that way." Tears threatened, uninvited. She blinked them back. "This can't happen." "I know," he said, but it almost did. The silence wrapped around them again, heavy and soft. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move. She didn't. His hand touched her cheek, just once, lightly, and then fell away. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a promise, but it was enough to change everything. The knock on the door startled them both. "Cars out front," a muffled voice called. Claire stepped back first, her voice clipped. "Let's go." They walked outside in silence. The motel faded behind them as they climbed into the repaired vehicle. The leather seats were cold. The windshield fogged slightly as she turned the key, the engine humming to life. The road home was long and quiet. Ethan looked out the window. Claire kept her eyes forward, gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Words hovered between them, unspoken and unfinished. Halfway home, Mark called. Claire put the phone on speaker. "Hey," he said cheerfully. "You two survive your little detour?" "Barely," Claire replied, her voice controlled. "Motel was awful. Car's fine now." "Glad you're safe. I'll be home late tonight. Big client dinner. You know how it goes." She smiled faintly. "I do." "Tell Ethan I said thanks for taking care of you." She glanced at her stepson. He didn't look back. "I will." They drove the rest of the way in silence. At home, the house looked the same. Unbothered. Unchanged. The way a stage looks before the actors arrive. Claire walked inside and dropped her keys in the bowl by the door. Ethan followed her, but kept his distance. "I'm gonna lie down," she said. "Long night." He nodded. "Yeah, I'll unpack later." She paused at the stairs, turned slightly, and met his eyes. For the first time since they'd left the motel, she saw hesitation in his expression, and regret. But there was no anger, no shame, just understanding of what almost happened, of what didn't, and of the choices they still had to live with. That night, as Claire lay in bed next to Mark's empty pillow, she listened to the rain tapping faintly against the window. Her thoughts drifted, not to the what-ifs, but to the what-almosts. Some betrayals scream, others whisper, and some never happen at all, but they still change you.